Hello, my name is Gregory Aidala. I'm a retired school superintendent from Guilderland and also a member of the CASDA faculty. Today's program, Confessions of a First-Year Superintendent, will involve my conversation with Linda Goewey, who is now in her second year as superintendent of the Hudson Falls Central School District, but she's going to reflect about her experiences when she first came to the district. Being a superintendent is a very demanding position. You are the face of the district. You're involved in personnel decisions, curriculum and instruction, working with the Board of Education. There are some political issues as well. And there are just so many priorities that come at you all at once, can make that first year very overwhelming. So we're going to use this time today to talk about what those experiences were like during the first year as we meet with Linda Goewey. Linda was a fifth grade teacher and also served as an elementary school principal before becoming an assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction in the Central Square School District. She came to Hudson Falls in July of 2015, and so I want to officially welcome Linda into today's program. And maybe as we get started with our conversation, Linda, first tell us a little bit about Hudson Falls, the size of the district, and because that probably will frame your responses to other questions.
Thank you for having me, Greg. Hudson Falls Central School District has about 2,400 students. We have about 200 teachers and 100 of support staff. So it's a fairly big district for the area. I'm in the Washington BOCES, and I'm one of 31 schools in that BOCES.
Good. So let's actually go back to even before July 1st of 2015. What attracted you to go to apply to Hudson Falls? Because Central Square is really in close to Oswego, so this was a definite move. It wasn't to the neighboring school district, but you were a couple hundred miles away.
I was. I spent a lot of years, 7 years, as the assistant superintendent, and was fortunate to be able to work very closely with the superintendent. So I learned a lot about that job, and I was ready for a change. I was ready to do the job. I wanted to be the person who had the name of superintendent and make those decisions. I've been fortunate to love every single one of those jobs, so whether it was teacher or principal or assistant superintendent or superintendent, I've loved the job. You'll often hear teachers say, I don't want to leave the classroom, I love the kids. I feel the same way. However, all through the way, I have been able to touch more kids' lives with the different jobs that I have. One day I was sitting in my office as assistant superintendent in Central Square, and I got a call from the district superintendent of Washington County BOCES, and he introduced himself on the phone and said that there was a search going on in Hudson Falls, New York, and I didn't even know where Hudson Falls was at the time, and so he talked to me about it, and a district superintendent from where I was spoke to him. They meet regularly in Albany, so I believe they might talk about candidates at those meetings. And they were looking for someone who had a strong curriculum background and the instructional piece. And they were conducting interviews, and he asked if I wouldn't mind coming and just talking to the board. So the first time I came to Hudson Falls, it wasn't even an interview. It was just a chat with the board to see if they liked me and I liked them. And we hit it off right away. And then I went into the official process after that, and I was the successful candidate and made the move.
Great. So let's fast forward to your first day on the job. It's, I don't know, July 1st.
July 1st.
So you're coming in and everybody's going out the door.
Correct.
Or has already gone out the door because the last day of school was, June 25th. So what was your first day on the job like? Did you develop an entry plan? How did you get started in July and August as you're preparing for the opening of school in September?
Went in on July 1st. I was fortunate prior to that in the month of June. I spent 3 days with the superintendent that was retiring. That gave me a little sense of how it looked from his point of view and how it looked with the people still on the job. So I came up in June for a few visits. When I was in the midst of my interview process, I did create an entry plan for probably about the first 100 days, and it ended up being the first year, really. That plan talked about what I would do the first day, the first week, the first month, and I stuck to that plan as well as reporting it to the board. It gave me direction that July. I really spent that first week and that first month really learning where I was. At first, I didn't even know that where the 5 schools were. I couldn't remember. I used to use my GPS to get there. I remember at first. So learning the schools, the buildings, and the people in them. In the summer, our administrators work, so it gave me a good couple of months to establish relationships with them and to learn Hudson Falls itself, the general area, before the kids came in and we really started for the school year.
Yeah. Do you remember some of your opening day remarks, from, let's say, September, right after Labor Day, where you had an opportunity to meet with the entire staff, for opening day of the school year, and what this would have been the 2015-16 school year? I
do. I know the importance in any job of humor. I start off with humor in the pronunciation of my name. Goewey is a hard name to say if you try to read it, and there are a lot of different pronunciations, especially as there's some car dealers in the area that say it differently. So I started my opening speech with a little bit of a lesson on how to say the name and did it kind of a funny way. And then after that, talked about who I was as a person, introduced my family, my kids, by way of a slide, and got them to know me personally, and then talked a little bit about my vision and the excitement that I had about starting my superintendency there in Hudson Falls.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel well prepared for the job?
I did. I did. I think my years in education and all the different jobs, I think my time in a superintendent development program, and especially my years as assistant superintendent, working closely with the superintendent, helped me to feel prepared. Of course, walking in the door the first time and not knowing anyone or not knowing the area and not being with my friends and family that I had back home was a little difficult. But after time, I acclimated myself and learned how to live this new life. Yeah.
So during your first year, did you ever hear the phrase, could be from your secretary, could be from your administrators or a teacher, something to the effect, well, that's not the way we usually do it here. And you're the new superintendent, and do you feel locked into that type of situation? Does that, how do you react when you have what you think is a better way of doing whatever the task might be, but to hear that that's a change from the past approach?
So I heard that phrase more times than I ever expected to. People are steeped in what they are used to and don't particularly like change for the most part. So I would at first listen to how it was done and decide if that was still okay, or if I could live with it, or if I needed to make that change. The people around me quickly learned that I enjoy change and that it's okay to change things that maybe have been done the same way over the years in hopes that it will be better for our students and staff. I actually kept in the back of my head all of my decisions are made on what's best for our kids, but I remember the board saying to me during my interview that we are in fact bringing you here to change some things. So I thought, well, I have to do that. So
Right.
That led me to be able to take that statement and change it around. However, as I moved into my second year, let me say that it got even easier for me, because at first you're not sure if you're changing the things that you should be. The second year I was very sure.
So, during your first year, was there any specific challenging or difficult decision that you had to make that sort of stands out in your mind? Maybe you could describe it in general terms for us.
I think what was most difficult for me my first year as coming in, I definitely had a plan, an entry plan, and a vision for how I thought it should look. And as I said, I embrace change, so it wasn't such a big deal for me to change things up. I think what I learned was I probably needed to slow down a little bit. I saw some things that needed changing, and I wanted to change them all quickly. And they all influence students in different ways, as well as the Hudson Falls community. So I guess it was a good problem to have.
Mm-hmm.
How can I decide what changes to make now, and which one should I wait for? If there's one thing that the staff of Hudson Falls could tell you if they were sitting here, is that, yeah, Linda's not afraid of change. And it doesn't mean that the changes are always right at first. It's okay to make a change and then maybe temper that a little bit. But we have to make some changes if we're going to move forward.
Was there ever a time during your first year that you were discouraged in any way?
Oh, sure. Sure. Just like any job, there are people who stand behind you, and there are people who fight the new person or fight the change. And sometimes it was discouraging because as a teacher or as an assistant or whatever job I had before, I always respected the superintendent and thought whatever my boss says is what I'll do. And I quickly found out that not everybody feels that way. So sometimes there were people who I sort of felt discouraged that they weren't seeing it, but it helped me learn about people and learn that maybe they were afraid of change, or maybe they were unsure as to where it left them. So it led me to be very careful as to who I could trust, and know the importance of forming a team that I could trust.
Right. So what was it like on your first snow day closing? Was it an easy call?
What I learned was calling a snow day is so much more important in the superintendency that you think than anyone thinks. It can make you or break you, believe it or not. So coming from originally born and raised in Oswego, New York, it's a snow belt. So to me, unless there's like 24 inches of snow, I don't even really think it's anything. But it really, although my area is very cold, there wasn't that many inches of snow. So I quickly heard, as the day was a little bit blustery or snowy, why aren't you calling a snow day? And in the days of social media, I was getting hit on Facebook, etc., because who's that new superintendent from out west who doesn't call a snow day, and my kids aren't safe?
Did they think you were from Alaska?
I think they did.
Yeah.
I actually wrote a letter and put it on my website as to what the superintendent goes through the morning of a snow day, because I think some people think that you just wake up, look out the window, and make a call. It really wasn't like that. It's about, as you know, Greg, getting up at 4 in the morning, and there are people that help me with that decision. I have a great relationship with the man who manages the snow plows, and he lets me know if he can get those roads cleaned up.
Right.
And I also spend some time in the morning with the supervisor of transportation, and he lets me know if the people can get in, the bus drivers can get into work and can pick up our kids, and if the buses are starting, and all of those things. So it really isn't just the superintendent's decision. I just take all of that information to base my decision on.
Yeah, like you say, superintendents are very popular when school is closed.
Yes.
And very unpopular when there's snow on the ground and everybody's coming to school, whether it's a 2-hour delay or just a regular time. But
Sure
it may seem like a small issue, but it's very important. It's a very visible decision that you're
Correct.
making. So let's move into communication and talk about the importance of communication, whether it's with your staff or the community. What steps were you taking during your first year to ensure that you were communicating with your constituents?
Overall, I find I can't communicate enough. The best way for me to communicate to people is face-to-face, but I know that there isn't always time for that. So, for example, my board I write a memo to them every week, give them updates from the week and some things that I've been to and that I want them, information I want them to know. Of course, if there are any emergencies, I will talk to my board president and he will inform the board and the district so they're aware before they hear it from community. Right. They need to know first. I do meet on a regular basis with my board president to talk about what's going on in the district and how we will plan our board meetings. So that's information to the board. I also know the importance of being visible and being out in the community and out at events. I find that there are some parents who feel comfortable making an appointment with my secretary to come in and talk with me in my office, but there is a whole set of people who feel more comfortable talking with me when we've got our jeans on in the football stands and just more of a casual conversation, or maybe in the local grocery store to just talk. So making yourself available and visible in the community is another great way to communicate. Of course, there are the regular letters that district sends out, newsletters. I have a Facebook page. I have a Twitter account. So I'm constantly, as I'm moving around the district, taking pictures of what I'm doing and sharing them out. So I find that parents are very engaged in Facebook and will find information there. Students like Twitter, and they're into the social media piece. So that's been bigger for us this year.
Do they respond to your various Facebook? Do you have many friends?
I do. I have followers, and I really enjoy the retweets and likes on the Twitter account because most of the time that's all good news about Hudson Falls. If I'm sitting at the musical, I'll take a picture of some of the students, or just this last Friday I was at a science symposium and tweeting out how proud I was of the young lady who was sharing her science piece. So it keeps up my Twitter followers on where I am. And my family as well, they follow me on Twitter.
Good. Let's talk about the board superintendent relationships. You have a 9-member board in Hudson Falls.
I do.
And you say that you share a weekly memo to the board about things that are taking place, in the district. What are your board meetings like? They smooth? Do you get public audience? Have you had a contentious board meeting yet?
Somewhat contentious. So for starters, yes, I do write a memo to them weekly as far as communicating with the board. Do have a 9-member board. I have a very professional board, and I have a great board, so I'm very fortunate. As the superintendent, your relationship with the board, I believe it can make you or break you because they're your boss, and they are the people that hire you, and they're also the people who might fire you or not renew your contract. So I have made it a point to be as transparent as I possibly can with them, and really give them my feelings about an issue in a board meeting. We talk very openly. Of course, unless it's about personnel or negotiations, it would be break into executive sessions, but share there. So I feel as though I have a great relationship with the board and they with me. As far as contentious board meetings, that's only been if I made a decision that was unpopular with a parent, maybe around the code of conduct. But I always make sure that my board president, if I know it's going to happen, knows about it as well. So there are no surprises. It keeps our board meetings very smooth. We try to take care of the issues before the board meeting so that doesn't come up. But if it does, the support that I have of the board is very valuable. So they will say, have you made an appointment with Mrs. Goewey or the principal? Because that's where student issues are dealt with, not at a board meeting. That's very valuable.
Would you agree with this statement that the superintendent has a special relationship with the president of the Board of Education? Not to say that you don't have a positive relationship with the other 8 members, but is your board president your go-to person to kind of bounce ideas off of, and to just share information before it goes to the full board in some instances?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm very close to my board president. I talk to him, I would say 3 or 4 times a week, and always before a board meeting, of course. But when it comes to new ideas and big changes for Hudson Falls, especially those changes that we were just talking about, something that's been done the same way, I really find it benefits the change if I talk through my reasoning and then share what I think the change would be or should be. He'll give me his 2 cents on it, and somehow we come to the right way of presenting that come board night. Yeah, the relationship with my board president has been so valuable, both as someone who has helped me through some trials and tribulations of the first year, and guiding me in how to successfully deal with the whole board.
That's great. Would you say you're finishing your 2nd year as superintendent in Hudson Falls? Was the 2nd year easier than the first?
Yes.
What are you looking forward to in the 3rd year, as July 1 is not too far off?
I think the first year is so new, and there are so many things to learn, especially if you enter the community as well as entering the job. So there was a lot of learning to do. And I also learned about what was going on in the schools and programs. I make it a point to go into, I have actually scheduled on my calendar times in each of the buildings every month, because sometimes, all the time, maybe I should say, as superintendent, things come up and people will want your time. But if something's on my calendar, I will stick to that unless there's an emergency, of course. So that gets me out into those buildings. It allowed me to learn what was happening and maybe what needed change. And because of that, in the 2nd year, I was able to make some visionary targets, and we came together as a leadership team and tried to make improvements in our instructional practice, in our graduation rate, in our courses, our course failures, those sorts of things, and really work on those. As I enter my 3rd year, I want to do that even more. So I want to talk about good instructional practice. So that's the instructional piece. That's my comfort level. You could hear me talk about that forever because it's my comfort. It's something I love to talk about. But there are other aspects of the job that I feel I've gotten better at. I have relationships with the supervisor for buildings and grounds, and we just hired a new food service person. So these are people now who I can easily pick up the phone and ask for the real story, even though I might have heard something else, and trust that we're working together to do the best for Hudson Falls.
Yeah, I think as a retired superintendent who works with first-year superintendents, I think specifically scheduling time where you are going to the buildings, the elementary school, the middle school, the primary school, and it is so important for new superintendents, because it's so easy to get bogged down with the work that you have, especially as you're doing it for the first time. So it may take a little bit longer, but making sure that you're fulfilling your time in the buildings and being visible, because I think it's important for teachers to see their superintendent, for principals, to have some non-crisis time to interact with the superintendent and talk about, specific issues that, they might be dealing with in their respective buildings. So I think that's a a great way to divide up your day. And is it fair to say that there's no such thing as a typical day or a typical week as a superintendent? How much time do you spend, let's say, preparing board agendas and your weekly communications? Is that something that requires a lot of your time?
Yes. So it's something that I start the minute I send out the last one. So if I send it every Friday, and as soon as I send that out, I actually pick up the empty memo piece again, and start thinking about the next week. And I leave that on my desktop on my computer. And as things happen through the week, I will start putting things in writing. Of course, I finalize it, start finalizing on Thursday and then into Friday morning. But it's really always a work in progress for me. So if you're looking for a job where you start something, you get it finished, and everything is always done and you're done with everything, the superintendency isn't for you. You're always working on something. And I can honestly say that there's ever been a day in my years there so far where I thought it was a slow-moving day and I didn't really have anything to do.
Right.
Every day goes by quickly.
I think that's a very useful strategy. You think of the end-of-week communication that you're sending home, but it's not something that you start on Thursday. It's something that begins much earlier, and you're continually adding or taking away, so that the final product is really the culmination of the week's activities.
Yeah, I didn't know that at first, Greg. I had to sort of learn that the hard way.
Right.
And I would start Thursday and I'd be doing it all Thursday night.
Right.
And I realized that it was much more fresh in my mind as something happened. So I will stay at work after everybody goes during the week and sort of work on it a little bit each day. It makes Thursday night much easier.
Yeah. The budget. In working with superintendents, new superintendents, the budget is A, very time consuming, B, somewhat threatening because if you're, let's say Hudson Falls has a $40+ million budget. What was it like developing that first budget for, let's say, would have been the 16-17 school year as you were on the job? Was that a little out of your comfort zone?
I would say it was very out of my comfort zone. I had I had worked in budgets in small pieces. As assistant superintendent, you maybe worked with a certain amount of money to buy books or buy supplies. And the same as a building principal, you were given a certain amount of money and you spent that and then it was over. It isn't like that. As a superintendent, you have a large amount of money. And not only do you have to know all of the aspects of money coming in and money going out, and taxes and all of those things, but it also is about how are you spending that money? Does it match up with the vision you have for the district? So if you have only so much money to spend, are we going to spend it on new chairs for the district office? Or are we going to spend it on a new reading program because that's what we really need? It really depends on where the money is best spent. So I'd spend a lot of time not only learning about what an entire school budget was and working with my business official. I was lucky to have a great business official to sit and help me. We would actually formulate the budget presentation, and I would go through and ask every single question I thought possibly someone could ask me, and he would talk to me about the answers so that we could be ready for anything that came our way when it came to budget presentation.
So is it fair to say that whether it's budget or other facets of the superintendency, that you've learned a lot on the job?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's nothing like experience in this job.
Yeah. The superintendent is the face of the district, but in order to be successful, there are many people who contribute. Teamwork is really important. Describe for us just some of the teams that you have in the district that help you to do a better job as a superintendent.
Well, Greg, I'm a big believer in team, and I talk about it all of the time in a variety of places in the district. I don't feel as though I singly could run that district alone. Even though I have the title of superintendent, I need help, and that help comes from my team. We are all a team, so as we said before, all the students and the teachers and the staff, we're all a team to run the district. But then I am a member also of smaller teams. My administrative staff, I call my cabinet, we meet regularly to talk about instructional decisions and what's happening in each of the buildings and share that with each other. My internal cabinet, which consists of the 2 other administrators in my district office. Although we meet regularly, once a week, we have that planned and on our calendars, I can honestly say that we probably meet 2 or 3 times a day. And it could just be for 5 minutes, but
Right.
if something's happened and I just need to share my thoughts with someone, those are the people that I go to. So team is so important in the superintendency. And after the first year, I found that along with those teams comes trust. So people, I think I walked in thinking, well, everyone's just going to trust me because why wouldn't they? I'm their superintendent. But the reality is that it takes a little bit of time. They'll listen carefully to what you say. They'll see how you act in a rough situation or in a great situation, and with that trust, especially of team, you'll find that I find that now they're working with me and we're sharing a lot more openly and honest.
Mm-hmm. It's often been said that, it's lonely at the top. So who do you turn to when you need to bounce an idea off of, or you need some advice about a situation, or you're getting a lot of, I'll say, negative feedback about a decision that you've made? Who does the superintendent turn to for some help in that?
You're right, it can be lonesome, especially, so I came from the teacher ranks, and when you're a teacher, you have all of the other teachers, and you're in a unit, and you always have people that are right by you. When you get to the superintendency, you're it. Establishing great relationships with people depending on what it is that you need. So for district things that happen, I go to my internal team. And because they're available and they're right next to me usually, I can quickly get to them and bounce some things off them and get their advice. Sometimes, if it's something that's happened that's sort of a crisis situation, I might call my board president and say, this is happening, what do you think? How do you want to spread this news? So it really depends on who it is. Sometimes it's a mentor. It was great to have a mentor my first year, to have a retired superintendent from a different district, so that I could call and get his opinion and find out what he thought, and know that it wouldn't be any of my colleagues that might judge me on that. And of course, I am amongst other superintendents in the BOCES, so they are helpful as well.
Good. Maybe the superintendent it's rare that you have a 40-hour week, let's say, and that time is, whether it's night meetings, after school meetings, you spend a lot of time on the job. But I think for any administrator new to the superintendency, how do you balance your professional obligations and desire to do a good job with your out-of-school life and your family responsibilities? Was that a challenge for you?
Yes, and I think it still is. I'm not sure that you ever truly balance. It's my feeling that my superintendency is a 24/7 job. Certainly not in the job 24/7 at the office, I'm not, but this is the day of smartphones. So if there's a power outage, I might get a call at 3 in the morning, or if there's a huge snowstorm, I might get a call at 4 in the morning. So I'm really always on call, and so no matter what I do, I'm always that's always in the back of my mind, that I want to know what's going on in the district. It's the buck stops here, and I have to report to the board or report to the news station. So I'm not sure that it's ever balanced. However, because I have strong family bonds, I also feel as though that's something I can't give up either. So I make sure my weekends are filled with family, and again, with the use of technology, we're FaceTiming and calling and texting all of the time. But it really is important to have that balance, to take care of yourself, to take care of your family, because it's not a 40-hour-a-week job.
We're coming to the end of our time allotment, so let's end with this last question. You've finished your first year, you're finishing right now your second year, you're looking forward to your third year. Are you enjoying the job? Are you glad that you moved up to the superintendency? Any regrets? You're enjoying the challenge? And finally, do you feel like you're making a difference?
I can honestly say that I think the superintendency is the best job in the world. I think that because education is my passion, and I've been given this responsibility of being able to touch the lives of 2,400 students. And so for me, that's exciting and great and fun, and I love it. Sure, it's been challenging. I think the longer I've been doing it, it's not that it's less challenging, but you take your knocks and bruises, and the next time it happens, it doesn't happen that way again. So you get experience, I guess, is what I'm saying there. I knew as assistant superintendent that I wanted the superintendency, so it was something that I was looking forward to, and I really feel that I was successful in landing the right superintendency for me. I have a great relationship with the board. That's so important. I have a district that cares about kids both in the schools and the community. So it's a wonderful job, and I'm so fortunate to have it. I think, as we've talked about today, it is a lot of work, and it's not always easy work, but it is very fulfilling.
Well, it sounds like Hudson Falls is a great match for you, and it's so gratifying to hear how much you're enjoying the challenge of the superintendency, and it sounds to me like you're doing a great job, and we really appreciate the time that you've spent to come in and talk with us about your experiences as a first-year superintendent. So just want to thank you for being part of today's CASDA program, and wish you a restful summer, and the best of luck next year in your third year as superintendent of schools in Hudson Falls.
Thank you. We don't always get a chance to reflect on our practice because we're so busy in it. This has allowed me to have that reflection time. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.